Hello and welcome to tonight's meetup with Steve Lott. Steve is a multi-time presenter now. I think we're up to like three or maybe four talks.
This will be three.
This will be three. Okay, that's awesome. We love to see repeats, and I think Steve might be our first three-peat of the online people. So that's really cool.
Yeah, the in-person's challenging because I'm rarely in Pittsburgh. It has a deep water port, but give me a break.
Yes. All right, Steve, take it away.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try to share my presentation material here in Keynote, and we will see what happens. If everything has gone according to plan, then I can do this, and we should have slides. And that looks good to me, I think. Does it look good to you? Am I showing
Yeah.
a Life on Red Ranger slide? Sweet.
Oh, hold up. We are seeing your speaker view.
Oh, my speaker view. Oh,
Yep.
awkward. In which case, the problem is I have a second window open on my computer, which it seems to be using
I think that
in
there's that
preference.
over in the upper right-hand corner. See the window switch next to the X? There's like
Let's
two
see.
squares.
Yeah. Oh, and my mouse just went over onto the other screen. Let me do this and let me try one more time to share screen. Oh, you know what? Well, this is one of those things that is difficult to dry run in advance, because if you don't do it with the proper configuration of, oh, I like that better. Does that look more like a Life on Red Ranger in Zoom world?
You are not currently sharing.
Oh, well, in that case, but oh, well, that um, the nuance is that share screen, share keynote, and then we push play. And I believe now,
Yes.
yes, this is the way it's supposed to work.
All right. Excellent. Excellent.
Excellent, excellent. So yes, this is Life on Red Ranger. Welcome to our home. I want to emphasize that the boat is nominally where we live, but it's hurricane season. So we don't actually live on the boat all through hurricane season. We live off the boat part-time and on the boat part-time and move around, and hence the whole technomadism. How does one, I'm still working, so I'm a writer. I write books on Python programming, the programming language, not the snakes. And I live on a boat, and I move back and forth between boat and a bedroom we share in a house in North Carolina, in which case you might say, I thought you said you were in Fort Worth. Yes, right now this apartment is Fort Worth, Texas, and in a little while I'm going to go to California. So the complexity of it all is just bewildering. So the technomadding is a big deal. But this boat on the right in the picture here with the red sails, that is the boat, sailing vessel Red Ranger, moored in Dinner Key, Florida. John Erickson had asked a couple of questions about the boat. It's a 42-foot Whitby. And when you think about how big like RVs and motorhomes and well, even houses are, 42 feet long, 14 feet wide, it's comfortable to live on. It has two separate bedrooms with their own bathrooms. Nominally, we call them berths and we call them heads, but there they are. And in the main saloon, what you might call a living room, but it's not, it's the saloon. There's a pull-out settee that'll sleep to also. So 6 people comfortably. big galley, big fridge, all that kind of stuff. And unlike RVs where you can have a little bit of wastewater for a day or so, it's got a 40-gallon wastewater tank. You can go a right long time. Plus we have a composting toilet, so we don't use the wastewater holding as much as if it was our only way to use the head. At sea, of course, 3 miles offshore, you can do anything you want with your waste. But when you're inshore, like this picture in Dinner Key, got to think about those things. I want to talk, before I talk too much about the boat, about a trip back 9 years ago. We were in Nassau in the Bahamas. We wanted to come back to the US because it was getting close to hurricane season again. This is a thing that happens every year, October, November, people go to the Bahamas, and then in April, May, they come back from the Bahamas. So we're bound for Beaufort, North Carolina, which is out near, between Cape Fear and Cape Hatteras. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's a lovely, lovely town, very picturesque. But from where you guys are in the greater Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Philly area, it's a long drive. For us, it's 615 nautical miles. It's about 100 hours of sailing. And the way we do it between the two of us is 4 hours on, 4 hours off. So I'll have the helm for 4 hours. The Commodore has the helm for 4 hours, and we switch. And I was woken up at the beginning of my watch with the Commodore explaining to me that they smelled burning diesel. So like an idiot, I tried to mansplain about the diesel engine that had been thundering away for hours down there, but that was all dumb. The question that arises as we think about, I smell burning diesel, why would anybody buy a boat? What the heck is wrong with you? Why move away from friends and family? These are tough questions. We'll touch on them briefly. How to technomad, this is important. And then what's the upside? And maybe the other question is there even any upside? This is a nuts way to live. The view there in the picture is the view of the cockpit with the that big white box thing that looks like a computer is what we call a chart plotter. It has a GPS receiver in it, and it displays the nautical chart and the current state of navigation, where we are with respect to our waypoints, and big compass display and things like that. There's a wheel and a mechanical compass next to it. And then in the little left side of the picture is a piece of wood with some repeater displays on there with things like depth and some sailing information and the autopilot information. We used to have a hydraulic pump autopilot system made by a company called Benmar. And so we still call the autopilot Mr. Benmar, even though the Benmar thing is all long gone, but we still call it that. The Commodore's grandparents, this picture is from the 60s. Her grandparents lived in an RV in the days before RV was even a word. And they drove 300,000 miles in that thing, 27 years, I think they lived in it. So the whole, we're going to retire into an RV went without saying. Been living with the Commodore now for close on 45 years, and all those years, of course, we're going to retire to an RV, but I started scuba diving, and then I started sailing on little teeny sailboats, and then we started hanging around on bigger sailboats. And so, a boat is just an RV on the water. Okay, that makes sense. We were going to retire to an RV anyway, so it'll be a watery RV instead of a dry land RV. Okay, I think I got it. So we went on scuba and sailing vacations. This is the Commodore and my son many, many, many years ago in San Diego somewhere. And this was our 25th wedding anniversary, which was quite a while ago, in the British Virgin Islands. We chartered this boat for a week to see how much we liked it and whether or not we really wanted to plunk down every penny we had and a bunch we didn't have to buy and refit and build out a sailboat. And clearly the answer is we liked it. we had we had a conversation with my mother on this because, rural upstate New York, we live in the foothills of the Adirondacks, or at least we grew up there. The whole idea of a sailboat was kind of foreign to everybody in that part of the world. And we told her we are going to, buy a boat and move down to Norfolk, Virginia to fit the thing out and then sail around for a while. And we'd be back when we were eventually going to come back. And Mom said, "You're moving on to a boat? If you do that, don't come home. Don't come home until you have a story. Better be a good one." Yes, ma'am. Words to live by. Don't come home until you have a story. Okay. We had Tervis tumblers made with that on the paper logo inside to remind us, that don't come home until you have a story. We did sell everything. We kept a few tools and some clothes and a few hobby things, but not much. We, sold the house and everything. Our kids had left us. We were living in the foothills of the Adirondacks there up in New York on the right side of the picture. And we had two kids. One had moved to Las Vegas and the other moved to Los Angeles. So they said, "So long, Stinktown," and got the heck out of Schenectady. So there we were with a big empty house and basically a U-Haul full of stuff and an F-150. So let's get out of here also. So we got out of there. We had to find a place because you got to fit the boat out, and we wanted to live on it kind of year round. And Baltimore is a little too far north to live on a boat year round. And we kept moving down the coast, and we looked at Norfolk, and Norfolk, you can just barely get through the winter without freezing your patoot solid off. Charleston, the winter's cold, but manageable. Jacksonville's pretty nice, but we didn't get there. We got to Norfolk and started looking for a boat. And so the whole what next became, the let's fit this boat out here in Norfolk. What's important also is that this operation was not really, at the time, was not retirement per se. It was work remote. We were going to start technomadding. And this is back in 2009 when technomadding was not as much of a thing. It was very difficult to do then. So I wouldn't recommend it to anybody going back in time. Do not go back in time to 2009 and technomad. It was not easy. So we had an apartment in Norfolk and we were both working remote from there. The boat time was on weekends. And we happen to have the right kind of tech skills. I'm a programmer, and the Commodore was a sysadmin. And we had family situations with like healthy kids and healthy parents. So it all really worked out surprisingly well for us. We had to find a boat, which is quite difficult. There's a million trade-offs. There's just a million different engineering features of boats, and big and small, and the shape of the keel and the relative size of engine and sail plan. Oh my God, there are a million, literally, 2 to the 12th kind of trade-offs. No, it's more than that, isn't it? It's like 2 to the 18th or something trade-offs on this thing. It's insane how many different ways things can shake out. This particular boat, the Whitby 42, is kind of wide for a boat of its length, has kind of a big keel for a boat of its length, and it has 2 stumpy masts. It's the kind of rig is called a ketch rig, K-E-T-C-H, ketch. And the ketch rig is, well, it's okay if you're sailing around the world because you want little sail in the back pushing you day in and day out. But for anything else, some people will consider it a dreadful mistake. You can read some articles explaining that the ketch rig was a bad compromise for certain kinds of long distance racing, and you would never normally want that rig on a boat unless you did that kind of long distance racing back in the 70s and early 80s. So people tell you it's terrible. On the other hand, we've had it for, 15 years now, and it's great. What's important is, it's never going to be perfect. A brand new boat was you to buy a new boat from a factory, will arrive full of defects that you have to then fix. This is not Toyota or Hyundai or one of those other companies, Ford, that has perfected manufacturing. A couple of companies, Hunter and Catalina, are pretty good at it, but most boat builders are not great. And every boat is a custom job, and there'll be problems. Old boats have problems, Ideally, the most serious of the problems have already been fixed by previous owners or will be disclosed. For instance, our foredeck had leaked. And a lot of times the fiberglass that makes up the deck part of a boat above the waterline is a sandwich of a layer of fiberglass resin, a layer of balsa wood, and a layer of fiberglass resin. And if that remains sealed, watertight, it is a delightful thing. It weighs nothing and it's remarkably strong. If you put a screw through that top skin to mount some piece of new hardware on your deck, and water gets around that screw hole and into that balsa wood, that will all rot into nothingness. And so we had a couple of pieces of deck hardware the previous owner had installed badly, and it leaked, and the foredeck rotted. And so you figure, oh gosh, you spent what? He spent like $60,000 to buy the boat, and we had to spend another $20,000, $30,000 to fix the deck because it was in that bad a shape. It was disclosed. We knew it. We went for it because the reconstructed deck is a thing of beauty. We'll never get the $90,000 back. There's no earthly way we'll do that. But when we do go to sell it, we don't have to disclose a rotty deck. So that's a trade-off. I don't know. The bottom line, there's no such thing as a sail away boat. The Commodore is in charge of the community of Whitby, and there's also another boat that Ted Brewer designed that's called a Brewer, Whitby Brewer boats. Maybe 300 of them were made of this 40 some odd foot class of boats. And we occasionally get people in that group, people who join us on Facebook who, gosh, I'd really like to buy a sail away boat. We got bad news for you. There's no such thing as a sail away boat. If it's new, it's got defects. Take you a year to sort them all out, which is not bad because it's at least still new and often under warranty for most of that year. If it's old, it's got defects, and you're going to have to sort those out. Nothing is sail away. Everything requires rework. John, who's on the call here, said he's just ripped the engine out of his boat. A little bit of rework required there. There are some things we did not expect when we went and bought this boat. Okay, the smell of burning diesel, I didn't expect that. We'll come back to that one, though. One of the things we did not fully comprehend was the other owners of this boat. It turns out they all had a party in Galesville, Maryland every year. And it's not all, it's only like 12 or 15 couples, who own this boat, 24 or 30 people got together to talk about the boat and where they've been and what they fixed and what they've broken and where to get parts and all those things. So here's a picture of, on the left side there, that you can see 5 of these Whitbys parked around this dock. That's not a very big and resilient dock, and 5 Whitbys there is just brutal in a storm. In this glass-like calm picture, it looks beautiful, and it is. Oh my goodness. Best part about the get-together, touring everybody else's boat and seeing what they did that's different from what you did, their improvements, their mistakes, all that stuff. Picture in the top right that's a fold-a-boat, folding plastic boat. George there on the right side of the picture from Indefatigable carries this thing on his boat. You can fold it up for a long trip, and then when you get somewhere, you unfold it, you throw it in. You can paddle it, you can put an outboard motor on it. It's a very cool thing. So that's the Commodore and George studying the fold-a-boat. And then there's this Morning Light. That's just one of the ancient ones, since been sold, but just took a picture of it because, oh my God, that's, like hull 12 or something like that. We're hull 188. So that boat was made 10 years before ours. You wind up with a new circle of friends. The whole moving out of town to a new town, essentially technomadding, means you're going to wind up in bars and restaurants and coffee shops. And if you go to the same coffee shop every day, you wind up meeting a bunch of people, and some of those people are nicer than other people. And wow, it was really great. The other thing that you wind up running into are the marina regulars. Oh, here's all these bumps. This is me in this picture with almost no beard, which is weird. But these other four, well, the Commodore's on my left, and the other three people on the left side to you in the picture are just random strangers that hung around the same marina fixing their boats. And we're there every weekend together all through the summer. This is a great bunch of friends. We all have a common interest and a common location in which to exercise. It was great. I loved it. So where are we? Oh, 2000, some family learned to sail. 2007, we go to Tortola for a week. Do we really want to do this? And by 2009, we're moving to Norfolk, Virginia to find a boat. It didn't happen very quickly. And we've talked to people, somebody will say, well, I'd really like to do this, but I'm going to have to spring it on my husband. I don't know that springing it on your partner is really the best idea. I don't know. It was a 7-year process to get from, I think this might be fun, to let's actually try it for a week. Nothing to hurry into. It is a big lifestyle choice. It's potentially tough for a lot of reasons. Okay, enough about that. Let's talk about technomadding. The important thing about technomadding is the W's. You need a warm place to sleep. You need water and food. You need a water closet, separate thing. And you need Wi-Fi. I'll talk a little bit about the organs of the state. There's a bit of a sort of a legal problem occasionally if you want to take technomadding out to the extreme. This is a picture of the interior of Red Ranger with crap strewn all around it. The reason crap is strewn all around it is Hurricane Ian, a year and a half ago, knocked us off the jack stands. And so crap fell off out of the shelves and crap fell off from behind the fiddles and stuff and wound up all over the deck there. But you can kind of guess from this picture, you can see that there's a table folded down that'll comfortably seat at least 2 on one side, 2 on the other side. There's a big red and blue sail bag in front of it. There's a chart table to the right with stuff all kind of piled randomly. The galleys to the left, and that diagonal stripe in the lower left-hand corner of the picture is the ladder to climb up from this saloon area up to the cockpit. Water. And we're looking down into under the floor of the saloon. There's a box on the left side with some aluminum bits and some hoses and pipes underneath it. And then on the right, there's more of the aluminum bits and the hoses and the pipes and whatnot. That's a 100-gallon water tank. It's mirror images on the other side of the boat. So there's 200 gallons of water in the boat. And I got to say, that's a lovely thing because you don't worry too much about it. 200 gallons of water. With a little bit of care, you can use less than 10 gallons of water a day. So you got 3 weeks of water without a second thought. And if you want to be careful, you can knock your consumption down below 10 gallons a day. But the only time we measured it was when we were living in the Bahamas and we were buying about 10 gallons a day from different communities on the different islands. Of course, you have a warm place to sleep on a boat, so that it's a lovely, lovely package to have water and food and a warm place to sleep. You can live on the boat just with those 3 things without the Wi-Fi. In the long run, you're going to want the Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi and the internet, cellular coverage, in big cities and in, vacation land around Miami, around Orlando and stuff is delightful. But the coast, once you get beyond the big coastal cities, all of a sudden there's nothing. And we spent a lot of time in the Chesapeake Bay. Cell signal's okay in the Chesapeake Bay, in the northern Chesapeake. There's big cities, there's Baltimore. But the southern Chesapeake, there's not much till you get to Norfolk. And then further south than that, the Great Dismal Swamp and eastern North Carolina, coastal North Carolina, there's nothing. There's a few cities, and you can go long distances with no cell coverage there at all. So the mobile satellite internet, all I have is what you see on this slide. 2 ideas. Well, 3: Iridium, Global Star, and Starlink. We haven't purchased any of those things, and we haven't needed to yet. In the long run, I believe we're going to wind up looking very, very closely at Iridium, because the Iridium Go looks like a really good deal for sailors. Starlink and the whole Elon Musk business, I don't know. There's questions about that, and they prefer it not to be used on boats. They prefer you to use it on RVs, and I don't know. So we may wind up with an Iridium system at some point. We'll see. You become an absolute aficionado of good coffee shops. You don't even have to drink coffee. Drink tea, buy soda, bottled water. Doesn't make any difference. But you're going to find the ones that have Wi-Fi, the ones that have outlets, and you're also going to find the coffee shops that have nothing. Titusville, Florida, nothing. You're only a dozen miles from Cape Canaveral. The Kennedy Space Center is shouting distance from Titusville. How can you not have Wi-Fi in a coffee shop? I don't know. It was dumb. We didn't like it there. We moved. We moved south as quick as we could. And I mentioned briefly the organs of the state. This is a problem that comes up occasionally, technomadding. At some point, you really do have to have a real address. When we left Norfolk in 2012, we had no physical address, no postal service of any kind. We had a mail forwarding service, a thing called SBI, St. Brendan's Isle. They're based in just outside Jacksonville in Green Cove Springs, Florida. And they're an outstanding service, but technically a P.O. box. And they'll sign an affidavit that they take stuff as though they're not a P.O. box. And they'll even do things like if you order engine parts, they will act as the shipping broker so that they can handle the international tariff and regulations and whatnot for getting your engine parts to wherever you are in the world. They do everything for you. It is lovely, but you can't use them for a bank account. There's not a physical address in the way that banks would like to see. So all of a sudden we become an anti-money laundering nightmare because we're using a mail forwarding service. We eventually had to switch to my partner's auntie in North Carolina, a real address, the back bedroom. She does everything SBI did. She'll slice open the envelopes and take pictures of what's inside and whatnot. And so it's a perfectly lovely relationship, and it works out really well for us. But the fact that you have to have a tangible physical address is one of those things that is kind of imposed upon you. And we have become more and more adamant that a physical address is nonsense, but there it is. A great deal of banking and voting and everything like that is predicated on having a physical address. So, okay. So what was the point? Oh, I remember what the point was. The point was to see as much of the world as we can using the smallest carbon footprint we can, spending the least amount of money, making as many friends. The Commodore worked for General Electric. You may have heard of them. They're a big company, so corporate mission statements and whatnot. Oh my God. But, we both worked in the bosom of corporate America, so we got used to doing this kind of thing for clients and our employers, so we did it for ourselves. So the question is, how are we doing on this? Have we seen much of the world? We'll get to this. Are we using a small carbon footprint? We're trying. There's issues. There is a diesel engine in there, so we do have a kind of a sooty thing, but it's only an 80 horsepower diesel engine, so it's not hugely terrible, and it moves our entire house. So it's actually kind of efficient, all things considered. Spending a little bit of money, well, you don't have a lot of choice about some of the things you wind up having to spend money on, but we try to not live at expensive resort marina docks very often. I had to spend a couple of days at a dock at Key West because we needed water and fuel, but mostly we prefer to anchor out and dinghy in. Making friends, it seems to have worked out pretty well for us. We're pretty happy with that. Minimizing. So this is when we're on the boat, this is how we get around. That's a picture of a Tacacat inflatable. It's 10 feet long, has a 8-horse, 4-stroke engine on the back. The little white bag or whatever that looks like that's in front of the engine, that's a 20-pound propane cylinder. Yes, our outboard engine burns propane. We used to have a gasoline outboard engine, and we hated managing the gasoline. It's not too bad, but gasoline's an explosive. You got to be a little careful with it. So you have to store it in a way that all the vapors are guaranteed to leak overboard. The boat has lockers specifically designed to leak gasoline and propane fumes overboard. So that's not that bad. But the problem is if you don't cap your gasoline can correctly, or if you make some other mistake with the siphon, you got gasoline everywhere. And it's not an easy thing to clean up. It's not good for the wildlife. Everything about it is yuck. And worse, it was a 2-stroke engine, so you had to mix oil in with the gasoline. So there was just a ton of awful things about that 2-stroke engine, but it came with the boat, so we didn't pay anything extra for it. And it worked beautifully and reliably until the fuel pump died last year. So that picture is from barely a year ago. That was when that outboard motor was brand new. The 2-stroke motor had just failed, the day before, and we'd had to do this extremely complicated. It's a 10-minute story of how you, when living on a boat in, let's see, where were we? We were in southeastern Florida, near New Smyrna Beach. Living on a mooring ball, so we're out floating in the intercoastal waterway. Our truck is in Charleston, South Carolina, more or less permanently till we figure out how we're going to go get it. So it's a lot of I'm going to rent a U-Haul for the day, so I gotta walk to a bus so I can take the bus to the U-Haul place, so I get the U-Haul, so I can go get the outboard, so that I can get the old outboard, so I can drive. Oh my goodness, it was lovely, but we got it all done. It was fun. And I was writing book chapters at the time, so it was all delightfully awkward and complicated. But we were in Florida. This is a picture of me with 3 cases of beer in a handcart. That's the way that's done. The top right picture is our friends Sid and Heather in their inflatable outboard, and we're driving through like a tunnel thing in Florida. This is the sort of under the bridges and the causeways in Florida. And down this canal between the bridge and the causeway was a dock rigged by a grocery store. And, if you had friends who had friends, they would tell you about it. So you could take your dinghy down there and just go to the grocery store and get your groceries and load them up and go back to your boat. It was lovely. Not sanctioned by anybody, but lovely. And the bottom right picture is, I think, at the Annapolis Boat Show with just a kabillion inflatable dinghies from all the people who had come by boat to go to the Annapolis Sailboat Show and were living, out there in the anchorage and had to dinghy in to the dock every morning. It was kind of fun finding a place to tie yours up. So my mother said, don't come home until you have a story. So some stories briefly. This is a picture of me wearing a safety harness and fins and a mask and a snorkel, holding a tangle of line that had gotten wrapped around the propeller. Behind me, you see the Atlantic Ocean. We were offshore and it was flat, stinking calm, and the transmission was behaving badly because this wad of rope and buoy was being banged into the hull as the engine rotated, as the propeller rotated. It was a right awful mess. And then I swam down with a knife and undid it all, and everything was much better after that. In case you don't know, the Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, this is coastal Virginia, Delaware, and whatnot. Top right corner is Cape May, New Jersey. And that red circle, you go through the canal just off the top of the picture and down to Cape Charles and back up to Deltaville, Virginia. So, right, big trip. It took us 10 days because we goofed around a lot. We went to the Bahamas in 2012, which meant that was when we got rid of the last of everything, sold our truck, sent a bunch of stuff in a box to the kids in Vegas, quit our jobs, which is awkward because we didn't qualify for Medicare. So you're kind of giving up and having to pay for Cobra and whatnot. But, you go to the Bahamas for a couple of months and come back, and then go to Florida for a couple of months and come back. This is the Commodore loading some stuff into a box to be shipped to the kids. There's a porpoise or a dolphin, I can't tell them apart, just off the York River in southern Chesapeake Bay. And that is the Commodore and the auntie who does our mail forwarding. She came down to Charleston for Thanksgiving and visited with us a little bit. These are all people who own the same boat. We all ran into each other in St. Augustine, Florida. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 11 people. It reflects 5 different boats that were all nearly identical and all at various mooring balls down there in St. Augustine. It was a remarkable thing. Wait, we all have the same boat? Yes, here they are. There's all those same boats. And so it was a wonderful thing to visit with each other and see who solved what problem, what way. Here's a cruisers meetup. This is the sort of bigger community that you wind up a part of. These are people that don't own the same boat, but live on their boats, on the mooring balls, in St. Augustine. Some of these folks were fully retired, and some of these folks like us were tech nomads who were going to the coffee shop every day to work and things like that. Some of them had fancy satellite hookups for their stuff. Some of them were doing their work just using their cellular service and things like that. I was a coffee shop person because I didn't have a good enough cellular plan and I didn't want to buy the satellite gear. So it's go to the coffee shop religiously every day for a couple hours to upload and download chapters. This is Key Biscayne, Florida, and there we are waiting for a chance to go to the Bahamas. The boat behind us looks almost the same. It only has 1 mast and not 2. Correct. That's the Brewer version of the Whitbys and Brewers. Our boat with the red covers in the foreground is the Whitby. The one in the background is the Brewer. So here's pictures of us in, the Bahamas. Beautiful sunsets. In the top right, the Commodore is actually doing laundry on the boat. It's a 6-gallon drywall bucket and a special laundry plunger. Commodore was not happy about doing laundry on the boat, but we couldn't find a place to do laundry ashore, so we'll do it that way. The bottom picture you can't see terribly well, but there's a whale skeleton behind the picnic tables there, mounted on frames. That's in the Exuma Land and Sea Park. And these are other cruisers, complete random strangers living on the mooring balls in the Land and Sea Park. Oh, hey, let's get together by the whale skeleton. Cool. Very, very cool. Which, as I'm running out of time, brings me to this. I smell burning diesel. And you look at this picture, you say, what am I looking at? Okay, this is what the Commodore smelled. That yellow circle is around the fuel line. The fuel line has some safety tape on it that was not really blocking the fuel flow. The top right is part of the oil cooling system. To the left, there's a blue fuel line hose that's going up there. You can see a red piece of wire and a cable tie way in the foreground. But I had to jam the camera down inside, the engine compartment to get a solid picture of the fuel line, saying, what the heck? So that thing there was spraying diesel fuel onto the block of the engine. And it had chafed, the metal had been chafing against the heat exchanger, well, since 1981. And it finally chafed all the way through in 2012 and was spraying diesel onto the engine. We were about 40 miles offshore when the Commodore discovered this and said we probably ought to do something about it, because that spraying diesel on the block is not good. A, it's an environmental problem. If the bilge pump runs, it ran once, but bilge pumps won't pump the way the chemical that they use to make the diaphragms inside a high pressure diaphragm pump is destroyed by petrochemicals. So your pump pumps for about 10 seconds and then the diaphragm rots away and then your pump is junk after that. You do not pump diesel overboard, but you no longer have one of your automatic bilge pumps. Oh well. So stop the bilge pump. That was easy. I turned the circuit breaker off, but it was academic at that point. Check the fuel levels carefully. Check the engine RPMs carefully. How far can we go? And basically, it's head for the nearest bit of land, which in this case was Stuart, Florida. So, we're going to be motoring for hours until we get there fairly late in the afternoon. But thank God we get there during daylight. Entering from the ocean, a lot of places they're lit. There's buoys, there's channel markers, but give me a break. If you've never done it before, do not do it for the first time. Coming in at night with an engine problem, you will make bad judgment mistakes. If we couldn't make it at night, we would have slowed down to a crawl so we could have made it the next morning, because that's the way we roll. We do not enter harbors at night. We're just not that good a sailor. So then there we are in Stuart, Florida, buying parts. And there's the old fuel line and the new rubber hose fuel line. We had to order it from a guy in Kilmarnock, Virginia, and put it on a box and sent it down. And then we wait for the stuff to arrive. So there we are in technically Port Salerno. It was lovely. We were there for like 2 weeks. What are you going to do? Hang around, go to breakfast, go to coffee shops. It was great. And then on the way back up north, these are all a bunch of Whitby people. We all buy the same shoes. I don't know why we all buy the same shoes, but we observed that, wait, we all have the same pair of Keen toe box sandals. Are we all equally crazy? I don't know. Brunswick, Georgia, too foggy to sail. Like I say, we don't go into strange harbors at night. We don't sail in the fog. Eventually, we wound up in Annapolis, Maryland. And so there we are, living in Annapolis with sailboats everywhere. Annapolis is so much fun. Commodore working on quilts, storms, and this, blue crabs. Friend of ours loaned us a crab pot, told us how to get blue crabs. Old Bay, blue crabs, pressure cooker. Oh my God. Top right is one of our friends teaching the Commodore how to fish. I don't understand fishing, but the Commodore's pretty good at it. And the bottom right was somebody's birthday party at the boatyard. You can see the boats are all up on jack stands. It's a big gravel parking lot full of boats and people and somebody having a birthday. So let's have a party together. Cool. Here's another Whitby rendezvous with all the Whitby people, and you can see the dock in the back is packed with Whitbys, one of which has red sail covers. That's us. 2013, 2014, here we are going down the Great Dismal Swamp in October. That's when you flee to Chesapeake Bay, beginning of October. Thanksgiving, that's Charleston. Christmas, our Christmas socks are hung from the cockpit cover with care. That's outside Jacksonville in Ortega River. And of course, the thing you wind up doing is home handicrafts. Here's the Commodore putting you can see four steel rings, hose clamps, big ones, on a block of wood. Then the Commodore puts 4 peanut butter jars, glass peanut butter jars, in those hose clamps, tightens them up, and attaches that to the wall. So we have 4 jars hanging from the wall in the aft head, so you have places to put your toothbrush. Genius, perfect genius. Top right is starters, me changing the starter motor, and bottom right is the Commodore taking the sink out of the galley because I forgot what they didn't like. They didn't like something about it, so I had to repair all of that after they tore it apart. This is looking down the mast. You can see the Commodore there looking up at me, and I'm up the mast. I was fixing something, can't remember what. You can see our solar panels there, which keep the battery charged. Top right is a thing called a lee cloth on the settee in the saloon. Keeps you from rolling out of the bed at night. It's a lovely thing. We used to not know where to sleep when we were on off watch. Now, lee cloth, saloon, it's slightly quieter in the main saloon, and you're easier to find because the galley's right there, and you can be tracked down in case of bad weather. Picture a Red Ranger tied up to something. I think that's in the near Great Bridge, Virginia. And then we're out of money. Put on pants, get a job. So we knew it would happen. You know, we'd retired early, and you can't live off your savings forever. So then we moved up to Richmond, and then we transitioned from liveaboard sailors, semi-retired, I was writing, to full-time working stiffs with an apartment and weekends. So, you know, there's some weekend pictures that I'm just going to sort of flip through because I'm running low on time. But you can see the Commodore is up front with a boat hook and a Mylar balloon. Our sworn enemy, Mylar balloons, our nemesis. We use them as a man overboard drill. You see a Mylar balloon, you turn the boat around and you rescue the Mylar balloon. And then you stab it with a rigging knife and roll it up and put it in the trash. Do not buy Mylar balloons, and if you buy them, keep them under a tight, tight leash. West River Sailing Club. Oh, look, another Whitby get-together. It's like the 3rd or 4th year. A bunch of friends on our boat. Oh, yeah, friends on a boat. What a thing. Oh, and then here we are living out west. I see the little F-150 in the corner. Yeah, you know, we had family things to do. My daughter lives in Vegas. We had to go help my daughter out. So a year in Las Vegas. Boat's up on the Hart. Everything's in the truck. We go away. And then we come back and we sail around, visit some friends. You can see in the bottom right picture, the chart plotter, picture of the chart. On the left, the heading, we're sailing at a bearing of 186, headed south. And on the right, little yellow box, 1,000 miles. Yes, 1,000 miles on that equipment. This must be somewhere near Charleston because I'm freezing my can off in February near Charleston. Top right picture looks like New Smyrna Beach. Bottom right picture is the coast of Miami. The log there you can see is now 1999, 2,000 miles on this equipment. Yay! Southernmost point in the United States, that's Key West. That's us docked in Key West. Don't like to spend money on docks, but we had to because we were running low on water and whatnot. These are the dry tortugas. There are some birds that only migrate to the dry tortugas and then back from there to South America. So the serious birders have to go here if they want to see these particular terns or whatever the heck they were that only go there. And then top right, looking out from the fort at the Red Ranger out there in the reef near dry tortugas. Bottom right, that's a Cape May warbler, Cape May warbler, that climbed onto the boat during a storm and rode with us for a couple hours till the storm passed and then flew away. And we gave it a little food, a little water, and it slept in a coil of rope. Kind of fun. Oh, look, there's the storm. And then this is us tied up in the top right in Punta Gorda, Florida, and then in the slings as they took us out to put us on the hard. And then we got knocked over by Hurricane Ian. And this was a big, long trip from Annapolis all the way down to where we are now on the west coast of Florida. So, in case anybody has questions, You'll have to take yourself off mute and shout them out. But this is what we've been doing for the last bunch of years: break stuff, fix stuff, improve stuff, meet new friends, talk about what they broke, how they fixed it. Work from coffee shops, a lot of working from coffee shops. And let me, if I can, end this and go back to camera mode. And if anybody's got questions, like I say, feel free to shout them out, because there's no chat, although there is, if you want to use Slack, you might be able to use the boat chat on Slack. Or, like I say, take yourself off mute and ask any questions you've got.
Yeah, sure. We could take chats and take chat
Yeah.
questions or vocal questions. Go ahead, Patrick.
Hey, yeah, this is Patrick. Thank you so much. I got a quick question about sort of your sailing resume before buying a boat. Could you go into sort of what your history was with any sort of boating, whether kind of power boats or whatnot, and then going in sort of like when you were doing the charters, you kind of briefly touched on going from scuba to sailing to charters. What was sort of your progression there? Did you were you doing all sailboats? Were you doing power boats? Were you doing sort of the same similar size the 42 would be, or I don't know if you could kind of talk about that for a second.
That's a great question, and it sounds like you're on a similar path. Are you also like taking, U.S. sailing courses or considering chartering?
Considering the either the U.S. sailing or ASA, I own a cabin cruiser here in Pittsburgh, and love the idea of sailing. Have been on a couple sailboats, but never captained one. So I'm very interested in that, and sort of kind of knowing what sort of like the next steps were, and what your experience was with that.
I actually have some pictures in the slide deck of the very first time I got on a big sailboat. It was actually an America's Cup boat from the 20s, a big old wooden thing, just breathtaking in its sophistication. It was in Narragansett Bay, and so that was one of those things that really tipped me into serious sailing. But learn to sail programs tend to be smaller boats, 30 footers and under. And you do the basics. A lot of yacht clubs have a lot of fairly sophisticated learn to sail programs. Many local yacht clubs. Cleveland is a hotbed of sailing, by the way, but it's only July and August. But you can drive to Annapolis from Pennsylvania comfortably. Just avoid Breezewood. Oh, you can't avoid Breezewood. What a mess. But so anyway, you go to a learn to sail program at a yacht club, and their focus is generally on racing, which is not a bad thing. You learn a bunch of skills, and so I did a little bit of racing, but never very seriously. My first sailboat was an 18-foot racing dinghy, and I had taken a couple of learn to sail classes, bought that thing, and then pottered about in that for years. 8 years or something like that, or 6 years, in different, launching it off different boat ramps and things like that. You'd hope to get in, I had kids in high school and jobs and stuff like that. So if you got in 6 or 8 good weekend sails a year, that was up. So you learn slowly, but, and so that was a trailerable racing dinghy, so I could take it places. I raced it a little bit, did very, very poorly. A lot of it did not finishes and stuff like that, struggled with the whole idea. And then we moved up to the next level of training, which was the learn to charter, learn to bareboat. And so there was a place outside Annapolis that had a couple of weekend-long learn to charter courses. And you're basically living on the boat with the skipper for the weekend, and sailing around the Chesapeake, or motor sailing, as happens in the summertime when the wind dies out. But you learn a bunch of things about first aid and rescue, and docking, using the VHF to listen to weather and all those other kinds of things. It was delightful. A couple of weekends doing that. And then we chartered with skippers, went down to Tampa and chartered with a skipper. That was on the first boat that was close to the size we wound up with. That was a 49-foot Hunter down in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is a terrible place to sail, but whatever, that's where the charter was. And, fly down for the weekend, sail around with a skipper. And we do most of it at that point because that was, third or fourth, rental with a skipper. And the skippers was bored because there was not much to do because we kind of knew what we were doing. And that was a really good thing to have the skipper be bored because there was nothing to show us and we weren't doing anything obviously stupid. Breathtaking in many respects. And then after that, you've got a bunch of learn to sail programs, you got some boat ownership. They actually have a sailing resume online. And I sent that out. I chartered a couple of places. I chartered all by myself or actually with a coworker in San Francisco Bay once. And I chartered a couple of other times, because I traveled for business and I would bring a coworker and we'll go rent a boat and sail just for the afternoon on a Saturday or something. So by the time we got to go to the British Virgin Islands for our 25th wedding anniversary, I had chartered a bunch of times with and without skippers, and the chartering companies were perfectly happy to let us take their boat and go anywhere we want to go. So series of charters with skippers, bareboat charters, and away we went. And we do motor sail a lot. You say, well, I got a cabin cruiser and I motor a lot. I'd like to sail more. Depending on what you're doing, if it's the weekend and you're not going anywhere, or if you're crossing an ocean, you do a lot of sailing. But when we went from Annapolis down to Dry Tortugas and up to almost Tampa, Fort Myers, we motored 80-90% of the time because we had days and times. We only got 8 hours of daylight. Got to make it to the marina, got to make it to the anchorage in daylight. So you just turn the motor on because you can do it with the motor. The one that we didn't need to motor was when we were coming down to Charleston because that was very forgiving. It's like a 20-hour trip down to Charleston, and you leave Beaufort at night and you get to Charleston. If the current is with you, you get to Charleston at like 4 a.m. You're not going in before dawn, so you got 2 hours to kill outside Charleston. That would have been a good sail. But that was the night I got woke up in the middle of the night because the Commodore saw a distress flare. So, it's one of these things. I had my 4-hour watch. I'm down sound, 4 hours on, 4 hours off. The second of those watches, boy, you go to sleep hard because you only got 4 hours. Bam, I'm asleep. Bam, the Commodore wakes me up. I saw a distress flare. Holy cow, I'm in full-blown adrenaline shock overdrive. A distress flare, what do we do? We yak about it on deck for a little while I'm having my panic attack. And finally, the Commodore says, I'm going to radio the Coast Guard. Commodore radios the Coast Guard. I saw a distress flare. Another boat chimes in. I saw a distress flare. Another boat chimes in. I saw a distress flare. And then some woman who's on the bridge of a container ship, the captain, I'm assuming she was, says with a voice of God radio, our little toy boat radios are. She comes on with the voice of God. Yes, I saw a distress flare also. Coast Guard took up with her and got all the details from her, and the rest of us are just jokes because we're amateurs. And about 45 minutes later, they call back and say, well, when you see a distress flare that's that high in the sky, it's not from a boat. Boat's distress flare is never going to be more than about a fist higher than the horizon. What you saw was SpaceX junk. Oh, cool. And then it's my watch, and I've still got 2 hours to drive in circles before we go into Charleston. And I'm still pumped with adrenaline for being woken up 2 hours before because of the junk.
Hey, Stephen, we've got 2 questions before we'll call it a night.
I see hands.
John, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah. Quick question here. You are obviously cost sensitive, and I'm curious if you had a monthly budget that you were trying to target for your expenditures before you ran out of money. Did that work? Did you track it at all? Just month to month, what was your spend?
The Commodore tracks everything. She's got a health, safety, and environmental list with all the water and the times we pumped out the head and the weight of the propane canister for the outboard motor. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, she has everything written down. Do I remember them? No, not a word of it. I remember none of it. But yes, we had a budget and we stuck to it pretty well because if you're anchoring, your basic living fees are food and water. And a lot of places, water is relatively cheap. In the Keys, it's kind of expensive. But a lot of places, it's kind of free. Maybe you tie up to a dock to get water. And so groceries is groceries. And then you can multiply that out pretty safely. Stuff breaks and you got to fix stuff. So you've got a budget for that. But I think we were getting by on somewhere on the order of $20,000 a year kind of numbers is what I think, because I believe, we bought the boat for 60 or 80 or something like that. We'd sold a house for $120,000 and you spend 30 of the balance on the deck. So you got 10 or 15,000 left over from the house and something that we had in the bank, because we sold the car and we sold all the stuff. So I think that's, we had 20 grand to live on and stretched it for almost 2 years before I had to put on pants and get a job.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
It is, but you don't get to do anything. Don't go to bars. Bars are expensive. Got to go to the coffee shop because I need the Wi-Fi. But dinner out was a once a month kind of thing. And we learned from friends, split an entree. Anyway, who's up next? Martina?
Martina, go ahead.
Yeah, interestingly, my first question was also about the costs, and you just answered it. And I assume the 20,000 you mentioned was like per boat, not per person, right?
Yeah, for the bunch of us. Yeah.
And my other questions were about seasickness. Did you have anyone who deals with it and were able to overcome it? And only if we have time, how were you choosing where you go? Because I'm sure you have like different directions to choose. And I recently actually saw a presentation of someone who went to with a sailboat to the Antarctica, which is super cool.
Yeah.
But they flew to South America and the boat was already there. So I think that's like a tricky one. But the seasickness, I'm really curious because I do get seasick. I cannot drink alcohol on sailboats because that makes it worse. So is that something that you can overcome, or do people take medications, or how does that work?
We don't drink anything underway either at all, just as a sort of a normal safety precaution. There's no drinking until the anchor's down and we're sure that the anchor is staying down, and then celebratory beer. We actually heard a guy when we were living in Southern Virginia, and he was laughing about people who come to the Chesapeake from other places and don't respect the way you have to anchor your boat in the Chesapeake. And he told us, y'all have to understand the bottom of the Chesapeake Bay is just silt. You do not put the anchor down and power down in reverse. Nothing good will come of that. When you put the anchor down, you take your first beer. After the anchor has had a chance to settle through the silt, you may put it in reverse to be sure that it is dug fully in. Then you may take your second beer. So we take that advice, throw the anchor down. Okay, we're going to celebrate for about 10 or 15 minutes as we wait for the anchor to settle through the mud. But that's the drinking. We just don't. The seasickness, the Commodore gets very, very seasick and has been trying a bunch of different things. Most over-the-counter seasickness medications are not very good. They're weak. So you talk to your doctor and you get a serious prescription anti-nausea, and those work. But some of those have fairly long times on them. So the Commodore has an anti-nausea pill that's got like a 12-hour duration. So you're going to do your 4-hour on, 4-hour off, 4-hour on. So you take one at the beginning of the watch, and that way you get all the way through to 12 hours, sleep for 4, and then take the next one which is not really the next day. It's kind of the next day, but not really, because you're off by 4 hours. But so that's the way they manage the seasickness, because they get pretty upset. It's not as bad for me. I don't know why. I just don't get as seasick. But daylight on deck, when you can see the horizon, is beautiful. At night, if you can see the horizon, because there's a bright moon or bright stars, not many clouds, it's wonderful. Or if you can see the shore, it's wonderful. But if it's a dark, cloudy night, no moon, no stars, oh my God, it is Sixville, and there's nothing you can do. It is just terrible. But stay on deck, keep your eyes on the horizon at all times. Makes it difficult to do things below. So the worst for the Commodore ever was, we at night often eat just Zatarain's boxed rice. It's just, Zatarain's box with the rice in the flavor packet, boil the water in the pressure cooker with the rice in it, 5 or 10 minutes, and you have a hot meal. Boring, but a hot meal. And she threw up, I think, 4 times in the galley sink while preparing that. But it's the only hot meal we're going to get that night. So you gut it out, bring it up on deck for me, because my watch was just starting, and then have a mouthful of rice, just enough to settle your stomach a little bit, and lay down below deck, eyes closed. When you get up to go back on deck, try to do everything with your eyes closed when you're below deck. Just quick glance. There's my pants, put them on. Quick glance. There's my boots, put them on. Quick glance. There's my headlamp, put it on. Get up onto the deck of the boat as quick as you can. But yeah, seasickness is tough, and it affects us.
Yeah, and do people like get over it? Like, do they get used to it, and it never
You
goes
get used
away?
to it. And the different medications, depending on what we're doing, she'll sometimes use the prescription med, and sometimes she'll use ordinary Dramamine, because if it's only a couple hours, if it's during the day and it's just a little rough, Dramamine will work. But if it's going to be one of the overnight passages where there's no horizon, the prescription stuff really, really works. She also has the wristband things and whatnot. I don't know if those help or don't help. She just fire all the guns at once. Take the Dramamine, take the prescription stuff, put on the wristbands.
Oh yeah, wristbands.
Takes,
I forgot about those. I have those somewhere.
yeah.
And maybe last question. I'm curious. What was the biggest challenge? Was it the seasickness, or was it the financials, or was it that you get like the weather when you get like wet and cold, and you are trying to prevent hypothermia, or what is the biggest challenge in this environment?
Wet and cold stuff. Actually, the biggest, the worst day the Commodore had on the boat, and when I bought my very first racing sailboat back in the 2000s, oh my God, she was petrified of the damn thing, would not go on it for a year. But the worst day ever was in the mooring field behind Key West, Garrison Bight. We were on a mooring ball that was a full mile from shore, and it was just windy and bouncy, and we could not get off the boat for like 3 or 4 days. And you can see the island. It's right there, but you can't get there. You can't safely get down off the boat into the dinghy, put the outboard on, and go. And it was just the most frustrating to be so close and unable to make that last mile. That was the worst day. Coming back from the Dry Tortugas, we drove into a thunderstorm that was absolutely epic. 35-mile-an-hour winds, lightning, and high seas and everything like that. I was sleeping down on the settee in the saloon with a little lee cloth to keep me from rolling out. I'm bouncing against the lee cloth. That's what actually woke me up when I almost got knocked out of the bunk downstairs. And I, crawled over the ladder and stuck my head up, and she's like, yeah, we're fine. It's lightning and it's thundering and the boat is bouncing around. Oh my God, we're all going to die. She says, no, the autopilot had trouble keeping up because the boat was being twisted by the wind so much it couldn't correct the course properly and was putting up the little error dialog box. But it stopped doing that about 10 minutes ago, so we're fine. And all right, fine. So I went back to bed, and there's lightning and storms and thunder and water everywhere. And holy crap, what a mess. But she's confident. she's got as much time on that boat as I do. So the heck am I going to do? Go back to sleep. 4 hours. I'm responsible for the full thing. So sleep as much as you can before you're on deck.
Excellent questions, Martina. Trey, if your question is short, we'll go with that.
Absolutely. I
last
think it's the perfect closer question, actually. So Stephen, basically what I wanted to know is, what is your general advice for somebody who wants to take the leap into the technomad lifestyle, not necessarily on a sailboat per se, but just in general?
We live in an F-150 when we're not on the boat and we're not in Auntie Diane's back bedroom. And so the advice is Holiday Inn Express. Holiday Inn Express has a free breakfast. They're cheap. They're not very good, and they're everywhere. So we've driven back and forth across the country 6 times. When we go to California to get out of Texas for a while, we're going to stay at Holiday Inn Expresses on out, to California and back. It's a wonderful thing. The camping in the truck. Yes, we have an air mattress that fits in the truck. We got all the stuff. You can live in the truck. We have lived in the truck, done what they call boondocking, where you just drive off into the wilderness in Nevada and live some random behind a mountain somewhere. Who cares? So it's possible, but Holiday Inn Express, you have your warm place to sleep. You have your water. You have a water closet that you can go to the bathroom in that you don't have to climb out of the truck to use. And they have Wi-Fi.
Great. So the equivalent for me would be like book an Airbnb.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, great.
Cool.
Well, Colin, thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah, I've learned an absolute ton. I grew up going out with my grandfather on a 15-foot knockabout sloop on what he claimed was the hardest lake in the world to sail a boat on, man-made Lake Arthur up north of Pittsburgh. I don't know how true that was, but
no, it's true. Lakes are brutal because the wind is always shifty around the mountains, and Pittsburgh, because of all the little narrow valleys and crap in western Pennsylvania, oh my God, lake sailing is tough.
I know it was certainly challenging for me, and I almost went in the drink a few times. But excellent talk. Before we go, I want to do a couple of code and supply administrivia type things. First and foremost is our job board. We're really pushing our job board right now as people are looking for work, and we want to make sure that the code and supply community has jobs. We like when people in code and supply are able to find good and interesting work, and we want to make sure that our community is lifting up each other and helping each other try to find jobs during a rough time in the industry. We got lots of events going on throughout November. I've talked about those. I encourage you to go check out our meetup, codesupply.co/x/meetup to see the full calendar of things that's coming. And lastly, please do go vote for us for Co-working Space of the Year and the Exchange Awards. It would really mean a lot to us. If we've got 9 participants, including myself, if we got 8 votes tonight, that would be a wonderful thing for us. We're small compared to some of the other co-working spaces, but we've got a lot of people that we can reach out to, and we hope that you'll participate. That's all I got. Thank you so much for joining us for another Code and Supply online meetup, and we'll catch you at a future event. Cheers.